Welcome to Photoactive, a podcast about photography and technology. I'm Kirk McElhearn.
And I'm Jeff Carlson.
So, we're a day late. Yesterday was Groundhog Day. We could have said, it's Groundhog Day again. I don't know why they keep that up. On the BBC News at lunchtime, they caught it live, and the guys in the funny stovepipe hats and stuff, and they're holding up the groundhog, who looks like he really doesn't want to be there.
Yeah.
And I don't know, does that mean we're going to get 6 more weeks of ice?
In the U.S., we will definitely be getting more weeks of ice. Sadly, yes. Sorry, winter. I think you meant winter.
Meant ice.
Yeah. Actually, CNET, someone in CNET, I can't remember who off the top of my head, ran an article that was I used AI to determine whether there would be more winter, and the results were about as predictable as grabbing a groundhog out of its hole.
Yeah. I think the Met Office, so that's the official meteorological office in the UK, they've been talking lately. I follow them on Blue Sky because they give weather alerts, right? When there's a local flood alert or something like that. And they've been posting things about new AI tools for long-term forecast. And it'll be interesting to see if these AI tools actually provide good long-term forecasts. And I think by long-term, they mean more than 2 weeks away.
Yeah. I could see a potential for it. I don't know how accurate it'll be, but I'm glad that they're approaching that as, well, let's see if this is actually helpful, rather than we need to destroy all of our existing equipment because AI will do it for us. Not that that's something that happens in the U.S.
No, definitely not. I think though all weather forecasting is partly AI based now, because I think the most powerful computers, other than for like calculating nuclear explosions, were designed for forecasting weather because there are so many variables.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that is AI based now. And we're talking about, 7-day forecasts and 2-day forecasts and things like that. But it's not the same AI that is destroying society and leading to societal collapse.
Exactly.
Let's talk about something more interesting. We found an interesting article this week in PetaPixel. In fact, it was yesterday, Groundhog Day. Here we go. Compact camera sales more than doubled last year in Japan. And what I found really interesting is the brand with the biggest market share is Kodak at 24%. Do you hear anything about Kodak cameras anymore? I
had to look at that again because I thought maybe that was a typo, because I vaguely had the sense that Kodak they had either jumped back into the market but it's basically just been like a very tiny, tiny fringe thing.
The photo they show at the top of the article, we'll put a link in the show notes, shows a small Kodak camera. It looks like it has a 5x zoom. It shoots video in full HD. It's smaller than, so we talked about the Ricoh GR series in the last episode. It's a bit smaller than that. So it's compact. Presumably the Japanese like these little cameras, and that's fine.
I like the appeal of having something small that's not your phone. And especially, they can make small cameras that do a lot. There's a big difference between the sensor inside your phone and a sensor you can put even in the smallest handheld compact camera that will make a big difference, I think, as long as the optics are good and the processing is fine. So, maybe they're just ahead of the game with that idea of, look, I want to take real pictures, but I'm tired of what my phone is giving me, or kind of like what we've talked about in a few recent episodes. I want something that's different. I want something that is not a big honkin' all right, I'm going to laugh at myself here. A big honkin' mirrorless camera, which is hilarious because mirrorless are –
it used to be a big honkin' DSLR.
Exactly, yeah. They don't want all of that. They just want something small and snappy and compact, and there you go. I love that this is a thing.
So you told me a couple of days ago, we're going to talk a little bit later about a course you did about Lightroom, and you mentioned that this was at a camera store and that the Fuji X half camera, so the one that shoots half images, vertical half images, has been discounted, and it's expected to go down even again in a couple of weeks?
Yeah, probably. This place, Kenmore Camera, in I want to say 1 week from when we're recording this, they're having a big anniversary celebration. And I think they're going to discount the price for that to like $399. So $400 for this X half. Right now, if I wanted to go buy one, I could get one for, I think, $599, $699.
Well, the U.S. Fujifilm website says now $649.95.
Okay, yeah. So that tracks.
And this is through March 2026. And when you told me about the lower price, I looked on Amazon UK. It was $600. It's gone up to $625, which is still too much. It should be £100 less than the U.S. equivalent at a minimum.
Yeah.
So it was $849.95. I didn't realize it was that much. I thought it was only $800. It was $849.95, and now it's on sale for $649.95. At $400, would you buy one?
No.
No, just to try it out and play with it and stuff.
No,
not even.
And that's only because I don't really see the appeal. Like, I have a compact camera for $400. Well, I would love to try one out, but $400 still feels like too much money for what. Knowing my own habits and my own shooting, I would probably play with it for a little bit and then lose interest, and then it would just sit. And so that would not be a good use of $400.
No.
So I mean, I'd rather get like a flash or something like that instead. The other thing that was interesting when I was talking to the owner was that, you and I have also mentioned that this X half is super popular in Japan, and it's so popular that they are introducing white models.
Yeah.
Which is not something we see very much here. And it seems like the Japanese, and perhaps particularly, and I'm not trying to like pass along rumors or be stereotypical, but a lot of the young female Japanese audience is drawn toward these white cameras. And so you have a situation where I don't know how much demand there would be for something like that in the U.S., even if it was a popular product. But in Japan, it's so popular they're manufacturing a whole nother color, which is probably not trivial. So it's cool. I think you and I, we don't quite get it, and I think most people in the U.S. don't quite get it. But sure, I'm happy that it's there.
Well, as we talked about last time, I think the Ricoh GR series is a very interesting series of cameras. They're very small. They're pocketable. The problem is they don't have a viewfinder. But other than that, they're quite competent for what they do, but very expensive. I think the color one's $1,200. The monochrome's going to be $1,600.
Yeah.
They're taking advantage of the popularity of the Fuji X100 series, which has always been more expensive than the Ricoh GR, and they upped the price a lot with the latest one. And a lot of it could be tariffs in the U.S., because I haven't seen the price yet here for what it's going to cost. But I see, as you said before, people are tired of phone photos because they all look the same, and they want something that's different. And there's this big movement among, what are they, Generation Alpha now after Generation Z, because Generation Z is like over 30, whatever.
Something like that, yeah.
Of people trying to step back from technology, to use less technology. Now, of course, a digital camera's technology, but they're considering it a single-use device as opposed to a phone that they do everything on.
Yeah. I think they want more creative control. They want to be able to, have that, if not analog film experience, although that's also a big thing now. But just like they want to have a bit more control, so it's not just this thing in your pocket that's doing all the work for you and making all the decisions for you. And I think that might be part of the appeal. Also, I mean, my own kid is pretty adamantly against AI, like AI anything really. And I'm seeing a lot of that too in the younger generation, where they want nothing to do with this because it's, all the terrible things. And that, of course, puts me in an awkward position. I'm like, well, there's some AI that's not bad. Like, sure, Dad. And suddenly I'm 150 years old. But,
I've read a lot of anecdotal evidence that kids are, if they see something dumb, they say, oh, that's so AI.
Yeah. I also love that slop has become a a much preferred term. And actually, and this is going to sound like I just heard this, but I want to make sure that this term gets out in the universe. Have you heard of slopaganda?
Yeah.
AI created propaganda imagery. And just as a person who works with words every day, slopaganda is brilliant, and I love it, and I hope it really catches on more broadly.
Okay, let's talk about something else that's new. Do you have $10,000 to spare? Because Leica has just released a new lens.
I do have $10,000 to spare. I don't have a Leica body, but sure, I'll just buy the lens.
You'd need another $10,000 for the Leica body, or a little bit less, $9,000, I think.
Well,
they just released a 35mm f1.2 Noctilux lens. Now, they have, 2 or 3 different lens levels, and the Noctilux is the best. And what's interesting is that this is a $10,000 lens, but it's not like you might think for $10,000 you get this massive 200mm telephoto lens or something like this. And this is actually a very small, extremely small 35mm lens. I mean, if you're familiar with Fujifilm cameras, their 35mm lens is about the same size as this. The difference being, I think the diameter of this lens is a little bit bigger because the size of the sensor. It's a full frame sensor as opposed to the APS-C on Fujifilm cameras, but it's still a 49mm filter size, so it's not that much bigger. And it's tiny, and it's f1.2. Not to link to everything PetaPixel does, but Chris Nichols did a very good review of this, and he doesn't like shooting 35mm, but he really likes this lens. And he does point out there's a lot of vignetting around the edges of the lens. But what I was thinking as I watched this, we talked about megapixels recently. Here's an advantage of having a 60 megapixel camera, that you can ignore the vignetting around the lens when you're shooting at f1.2, and 75% of what you get is extremely sharp with a lens like that.
Yeah, that's actually a good point, because it's always around the edges that you've got some distortion, some vignetting. Although, I mean, I don't know, for $10,000, should there be vignetting, or are the people spending $10,000 saying, well, yes, I am paying for this vignetting because I like this look, or they're just justifying, why do I no longer have $10,000 in my account?
I think you can't avoid it at f1.2.
Yeah,
because he says when you stop down to like f2.8, it's a whole lot sharper. Mm-hmm. So I think that, this is just the limits of optics. We've talked about this, the whole background blur obsession with people. I've got to shoot at f1.2 because I got more back. There are uses for this in advertising, in fashion photography, but in most photography, you don't really need an f1.2. Mm-hmm. I just find it interesting, though, that it's a really small lens. And when you look at, I'll put a link in the show notes to a picture on the Leica website. And when you look at it attached to a camera, it's close to tiny for a Leica lens.
I'm tempted to switch over all my gear and get this, and then exclusively photograph by candlelight. That's what I'll do. I mean, it's not quite. What was it that was used? Stanley Kubrick used a 0.8 lens that was made for him to shoot Barry Lyndon, I think, something like that.
Yeah, because it was all shot with natural light.
All natural light.
Either outdoor light or candlelight indoors.
Candlelight on the inside, yeah. Crazy.
Yeah. So I mentioned earlier you did a class about Lightroom, and you wanted to talk about some Lightroom features that people might not know about?
Yeah, so I again, this is something we've mentioned.
You did an 8-hour class, which you were telling me how tiring it is to be on for 8 hours and to be, having people ask you questions and all that.
I have always had respect for teachers, but whenever I do one of these classes, and I do them every 3 months or so at Kenmore Camera, a local photo shop around here, I just have such renewed respect because basically the way it works is there's a 3-hour class in the morning from 9 to 12, and it just covers Lightroom Classic Library. So library management, catalog stuff, and it's amazing every single time how that whole 3 hours gets taken up with. I mean, there's so much to talk about, and people have so many questions about what to do with their images and all of that. It amazes me every time. And then in the afternoon, we take a lunch break, and then in the afternoon, it's all about editing and those kinds of tools. And you're right. With a good class, and this was about 18 people. So there was a lot of good question and answer, a lot of like people chatting amongst themselves during the breaks. It was a nice, good energy and all of that. But there were lots of questions, a lot of people coming up after the first class with, a bunch more questions there and then questions after at the end. So yeah, I was on my feet for 8 some hours and then went home and promptly fell asleep on the couch for like 2 or 3 hours. But the point behind all this is not just that I occasionally do classes. It's that as I'm preparing this, like a few days ago when I was getting set up, like the cadence that we do it at, there's usually 1 or 2 new features in Lightroom that I can work in, which is really great. It's not like just the same thing every time. And a couple of the features that I wanted to mention, like there's one that's kind of almost there, but it's a peek at the future. So in the latest release in the December, I think it's the December release, is either the October or the December release. So there's a new quote unquote early access feature called assisted culling. And what this does is basically it tries to solve the problem of I just got back from a photo shoot, from an event, maybe a wedding or a portrait session, and I have hundreds or thousands of pictures and I need to go through them. And it takes advantage of AI features such as facial recognition and object recognition, and we'll go through and you can say, all right, show me all of the images where people's eyes are closed, or that the person, like the subject is in focus, or that the eye is in focus. And it can look through all these, and it basically gives you like, this is a green check mark that matches these things, and this is a red X that does not. So you can very quickly go through and say, all right, these shots here, people don't have their eyes open, and I can just mark those as rejected and just speed up the process of culling.
Do they give you a bunch of categories to look for, or do you give a prompt to tell Lightroom what to look for?
No, there's no prompt. It's just
they have some preset.
They have some preset things,
problems to find. Yeah,
yes,
because eyes closed is a good one, right?
Exactly.
That you always have that in group photos.
Yep. So there's basically 2 categories: select and reject. And under select, you have subject focus, eye focus, and eyes open. And then like with eyes open, you can say like reject photos without people's eyes. So if you don't see someone's eyes, or if you can say like reject all can't tell images. So if it thinks that maybe this person has their eyes open, but probably not. Yeah. And there's also a sliding scale in terms of like the subject focus and the eye focus. You can look for something that's really, really sharp or something really soft. But then you can also reject things like documents and receipts, misfires, and exposure issues. So the exposure issues is great because if something is really underexposed or really overexposed, that just automatically gets flagged. Now, it's not actually rejecting or deleting, and you can set up some actions based on this so that if you're confident with it, anything with a super high exposure or eyes closed can just be marked as rejected. So
if it's marked as rejected, can you filter your view in Lightroom to not see those photos?
Yeah. Nothing's being deleted. This is just a way to surface the things that you want to be working on, and you're not having to wade through all of the garbage that you're going to run into anyway. So and I would say that it is a good first start. Like it's early access for a reason. I think some of the results have been kind of hit or miss, but it's definitely worth looking at. And because, it's a non-destructive approach, it's not going to just dump things for you. You get to review things. So you're saving a little bit of time, but you're not going through every picture one by one, which is what you typically have to do with, like, say, a wedding or a portrait shoot.
So early access means you get to choose. It means it's in beta. Are they collecting data on this? In other words, when you accept or reject what Lightroom says, is Adobe collecting that data to refine the algorithm? I would be fine with that personally.
Yeah, that's a very good question. I don't know if they're doing that with that. My guess is they probably are not. This is just, we wanted to put this feature out and it's not quite baked, but we want our people to use it and then they'll update it further from there.
It sounds to me like they're collecting data.
Yeah, they
because
might be.
Why would they put out a feature that's not finished?
Oh, because there are alternatives that have been doing things like this for quite a while. So there's an app called Aftershoot. And Aftershoot was designed by someone who did a lot of wedding photography, and it's designed for wedding photographers, but it's also kind of branched out from there to solve that problem of I just came back and I have 2,000 pictures and I need to get through them as fast as possible, and a lot of them look alike. I have 30 pictures of this group of people, but I want to make sure that there's one in there where everybody's eyes are open. And this will help do that. And I think not that Adobe wants to destroy this company or
Sherlock them?
Or Sherlock them, yeah. But I think it got big enough that Adobe said, all right, this is a feature that we should include, and because we have our current AI prowess that we can implement it into Lightroom and keep people in Lightroom and not having them go elsewhere. So it's cool. It's promising, especially if you have to go through a bunch of figures like that.
Okay, that's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
But that's for people who are shooting in burst mode or who are shooting a lot of photos professionally.
Yeah, exactly. I actually haven't tried to run it through, say, like a week's vacation, but these are very specific to people. And so if you have, a shot of a big public square, is it going to be looking at the people there, or maybe it'll just ignore it because obviously, is everybody here on the Champs-Élysées, do they have their eyes open? Well, we'll find out if we, that sort of thing. And then I wanted to very quickly touch on one other feature, and it is a color feature. So this is the problem that it solves. When you're taking pictures of people, especially like portraits and things, people have different complexions. Not just that maybe my skin is lighter and darker, but if you're out and it's cold out, like people's cheeks get red, or maybe they have, some acne or something like that. And that's always been difficult to fix without going into Photoshop. So in the point color tool, which basically lets you select a color and then manipulate just that one color throughout the image. So here's how it works. When you create a mask for someone's face, their skin, for example, you can select a point color. So you select the color of their skin that you want to keep. And then you adjust this color variance slider, and that balances the skin color around that area. So things that are a bit too red will be desaturated and come closer to the color that you want without having to go in and just say, I'm going to reduce the saturation, which can make things gray. It's a really nice, professional, easy method of fixing this kind of a problem. And I mean, it'll work. It's not just for skin color, but skin color is that problematic thing that you would probably run into more often and not have a good way to fix. And this helps to fix that.
Shall we do snapshots?
Let's do snapshots. I have another book. I got like 3 books.
What's going on here?
I know.
Wow.
I know. I do know how to read. I'm learning. I got 3 books for Christmas, and I talked about one in the last episode. This one here is a memoir. It has nothing to do with photography, mostly. It's called The Uncool. It's a memoir by Cameron Crowe. Cameron Crowe is a Well, he started off as a rock journalist. He then became a filmmaker. If you are familiar with the movie Almost Famous, that's partially autobiographical about how he literally started his rock journalist career when he was 15 and had to basically pretend that he was older. But he went and he interviewed Led Zeppelin and the Allman Brothers and all these huge, huge bands. He had a Rolling Stone cover when he was 17 or something like that. And this is just a really good memoir of that time. If you've seen Almost Famous, there are parts of this that are very familiar, and a lot of it is about his mom, and the mom character in the movie really tracks to what his mom really was like. But I found it to be a really interesting – I mean, just from a writer-journalist point of view, it was interesting on how he got access to things and how he made these things happen and how, nobody would kind of look at him. And every once in a while he'd have to be assertive and say, look, like, take me seriously. I know what I'm doing. This will be good. And he ended up with these amazing scoops that nobody else was getting. At one point, David Bowie was like the ultimate musician that would give no interviews whatsoever. And he kind of not really conned his way into a party, but sort of got swept up in going to a party where David Bowie was. And like the people who knew who he was like, don't tell him I'm a journalist. I'll get thrown out. They became friends. And then later on, he spent like just months with David Bowie as he retired his Ziggy Stardust persona and came up with something new, and just fascinating stuff. So it's called The Uncool, a memoir by Cameron Crowe.
I read this a couple months ago, and I feel the same as you. And what's interesting is rock journalism was just starting out. 10 years later, he couldn't have done what he did at 15. It was the really early days, and the record companies didn't know how to deal with journalists, and he even got paid by a bunch of record companies to write biographies of some of the bands. And it shows a nascent industry, which now has turned into just pure PR. Yeah. But it is quite charming to read those stories.
Yeah, I liked it a lot. What do you have this week?
Have you seen One Battle After Another yet?
I've not seen it yet. No, I'm way behind on watching all the movies, especially Oscar movies.
Okay, it's an astounding movie, and I wouldn't be surprised if it wins Best Picture for all sorts of reasons. It's inspired by the Thomas Pynchon novel Vineland. Now, I'm a big Thomas Pynchon fan, and Vineland is a really interesting novel. It was published in 1980. It's looking at the Reagan period, the post-Reagan period, and it's looking at revolutionaries and how they were being hunted down and all this. And it takes a tiny section of the story, the character names are all different, and it turns it into this rollicking adventure. One of the most interesting parts of the movie, this isn't a spoiler at all, there's a car chase scene at the end of the movie.
I've heard about the car chase scene.
It takes place on this road that's someplace in Southern California known as the Texas Dip, where it just goes up and down for miles. So as one car goes up, another one goes down a dip and you don't see it. Then it comes back up and then it goes back down. It's a fascinating sequence. It takes about, 10 minutes of the film. Wow. And it's really slow. It's really deliberate. I think we talked a couple months ago how they were using VistaVision cameras to film this movie. VistaVision is a type of camera that uses 35 millimeter film, but in the other way. Instead of going through vertically, it goes through horizontally. I'll link in the show notes to a video from the cinematographer talking about how he shot that scene and how difficult it was mounting these huge, incredibly heavy cameras on the cars and where they were located. Like a lot of them were really low to get that long perspective. A lot of them were shot with telephoto lenses, which you don't generally do with moving cars looking into the distance. The telephoto compresses the distance and makes it feel like it's really close to you when it's not. The movie is, one friend of mine who I recommended it to, it was on HBO, so he said, okay, I'll watch it. And then he finished by saying, it's one of the worst movies I've ever seen. So, opinions are divided, but I won't mention that friend's name. He hates everything. He's like that. I don't know if you remember the commercials for Life cereal. Let's have Mikey try it. He hates everything.
Yes.
But I find it a fascinating film. It's in two parts. There's like the before and the after. They take place about 16 years apart. Leonardo DiCaprio is excellent, but Sean Penn's role is just amazing. The character that he portrays is amazing. And this wasn't timed for what's going on in the United States now. I think Paul Thomas Anderson, the director, had been working on this script for a decade, if not more. Mm-hmm. And he finally got around to doing it. And the fact that it comes out when it does, with immigrants being hunted down in the movie, revolutionaries, etc., is really quite timely, but it's all accidental. So one battle after another. Strongly recommend it. 2.5 hours. Get a bunch of popcorn. It's a load of fun.
Cool.
Okay, until next time, Jeff.
Till next time.
Thanks for listening to Photoactive. You can find show notes, including any photos we discuss in this episode, at photoactive.co. That's photoactive.co. We couldn't afford the M. You can join our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/photoactivecast. That's photoactivecast in one word. You can subscribe to Photoactive in your favorite podcast app or on Apple Podcasts. See the links on our website. And think about leaving us a rating or review in iTunes or in your podcast.